The Orb, Part 1. There has been a disturbing phenomenon plaguing the people, the black people in particular, around southwest Georgia. The small communities just outside of Albany, Georgia, which is the birthplace of Ray Charles, Patti LaBelle, and Olympic gold medalist Alice Coachman, that sits nestled between endless seas of cotton fields, have pushed the fear of this phenomenon into the recesses of their minds until it occasionally resurfaces and cannot be ignored. One of the earliest known cases was little Samuel Jones in 1912. He walked off the roof of a barn. Little Samuel survived but lost his ability to walk. When questioned what on earth forsaked him to do such a thing, he had no words, as he couldn't speak. After several weeks, he described the small glowing orange ball that took hold of his will, causing him to follow to his fate. 1941. Little Glenda and Gladys Smothers were the apple of their parents' eye. At 6 and 7 years old, they were known to be the smartest, cutest, and best behaved little girls in their community when they disappeared. Their mother was the first to become alarmed when evening came and the girls had not yet returned from home from picking wildflowers. This was a pastime they enjoyed more than anything. They would bring them back to their mother to decorate their humble shotgun home. After hours of searching, they found Glenda next to the creek 3 miles from their home, silently crying and pointing to the body of water. It would be the next day that little Gladys's body floated ashore. Glenda eventually began to talk again and shared how she and her sister were hypnotized by that same glowing orange ball. She recalled how she was finally snapped out of the trance after tripping over a fallen branch. She gained consciousness just in time to see the ball lead her sister into the creek. Donnie Ray Tillman narrowly escaped the orb in 1959 after leaving the juke joint one night. He was known for his guitar playing and his love of moonshine, so there were skeptics who questioned whether he really encountered the orb or whether he was just drunk. A year later, they were silent when Donnie Ray met his demise after apparently walking onto a railroad track and patiently waited for the next train as if he was at the train station with a ticket in his hand. So it was the summer of 1997 when the orb would come back and appear before brothers Eddie and Eric. The two brothers' lives were perfect as far as they were concerned. It was their family road trip to the deep south where it seemed like life couldn't get any more beautiful. Eric had grown into an energetic, lively, and talkative 8-year-old who could make everyone laugh with his charisma. Eddie, at 11, didn't mind having him around at all. He would liven up any situation, and all Eddie had to do was keep him from getting into any serious trouble. The trip that would change things forever was like a dream passing through the countrysides between their suburban D.C. neighborhood and Worth County, Georgia, where their mama was from. She met their father while studying at Howard University back in the 80s. Since meeting and marrying their dad, she had only been back home 3 times, and the last time was when Eric was about 7 months old. So this had been the longest time, and the family was in a celebratory mood. Their mama had been singing old church songs and telling stories about Madir, her grandmother, and how she grew up shelling peas and cracking pecans. Their dad took the scenic route of back roads that weaved through fields of wildflowers and through live oak dense forests, overlooking them like protectors. They saw cornfields, tobacco fields, and then cotton fields. As they drove through the town of Sylvester, the parents started talking about their mama's crazy cousins, 5 brothers who grew corn and sugarcane for a living, but made the bulk of their money running a moonshine operation. Once there, out in the country, where their grandparents lived, they never wanted to leave. Their grandparents were fun and never failed to show or teach the boys new things. They fed chickens and collected eggs. They poured out slop for hogs. They fished and also witnessed their granddaddy and one of their uncles clean a deer. They shot BB guns with their cousins, and Eddie in particular never wanted to leave. He always felt like that place was home from his early memories. This time, the pull felt even stronger. Despite their mama protesting it, their dad told them they could go off to hunt birds with their BB guns one day. "Oh, Denise, let them boys go out and be boys. What's the use bringing them out here if we don't let them make memories?" They got so carried away out in the field, they didn't even notice the sun moving further and further down the horizon. It was during what their grandparents would call the cool of the evening, when the sky would be engulfed in what seemed to be a pink and purple glow. This was when Eddie's big brother Chip started kicking in, and he told Eric they needed to be heading home. Eric shushed him. "Shh! Look at that bud over there on that big oak branch." He had started talking like his Deep South cousins after only 2.5 weeks. It was a buzzard perched on a low-hanging branch eating a piece of dead meat. Eddie knew what it was because their granddaddy taught them what they were and how they circled dead animals before swooping down to feast on their dead carcasses. "That's not the kind of bird we can eat. Granddaddy told us that. Now, let's just go back home." Just then, the bird flew away. Eric was pissed. "God damn, Eddie." "Let's go," Eddie said. Just then, Eddie saw something moving towards him, the glowing orange ball. It got bigger and bigger, or so he thought. In reality, it was getting closer and closer. Eddie started moving forward towards the orange glow. He couldn't stop himself, but he didn't feel any fear. He felt great. Eric, seeing the zombie-like condition his brother was in and how he was moving towards the orange glowing ball, jumped up and ran into Eddie, both of them falling to the ground. Eddie, having his gaze broken, snapped out of his trance he was in. Eric rose up to his feet and, feeling victorious over this supernatural phenomenon, turned his face to it with a triumphant glare. And just like that, the orb grabbed his attention. He began walking to it. It led him further and further. Eddie was so disoriented from being snatched from the magnetic pull of the orb that by the time he came to, the sun had fully set and he could see the orb leading Eric beyond the tree line and into the woods. He screamed Eric's name. He ran after him, and then he got to the tree line. This was the first time seeing the woods at night, and it was a whole nother animal. He decided to run back to the house to get help. But on his way back, he realized how crazy he would sound saying his little brother was taken by a glowing orange ball. He thought to himself a kidnapper was more believable. He could say some man took him. Yeah, some white man with long brown hair. He had heard stories from his granddaddy and uncles talking about whites and the evil things they had done in the area. He thought that was believable. And at the end of the day, he wanted everyone to search and rescue his brother. If they saw the ball instead of some creepy white guy in the process, then oh well. He finally made it back to the house screaming, "Y'all gotta get Eric! Y'all gotta get Eric! That man grabbed him!" His mama, her older sister, her daughter, his grandma, two of her sisters, and one of their daughters, and Medea, were sitting on the porch and on folding chairs in the front yard. Once they realized exactly what he was screaming, his scream set off a counter-reaction of screams from the women of his lineage. Those screams were heard by the men like bat signal, and before he knew it, he was surrounded by a village of relatives looking at his mouth for every word. They grabbed rifles, loaded pistols, and checked their flashlights before heading into the night to find their lost child, Denise's baby. Eddie's grandma was already on the phone with 911. Eddie saw his granddaddy try to stop his dad when he asked for something to arm himself with. "No, Jake, I think Denise needs you here." "Dad, I ain't sitting here while my son is missing. Now it's up to you if you want me going out there with nothing to protect myself. But I'm going either way." An hour later, the sheriff deputies pulled up. They questioned Eddie, and things weren't quite adding up. Seeing how stressed he became, his grandma intervened. "I think that's enough, officer. Children's mind is delicate and can't take but so much." Eddie fell asleep waiting for the search party. He woke up the next morning to a new day, and they still hadn't returned. Mother forced him to eat a breakfast that consisted of pancakes and strips of fatback, though he wasn't hungry. Just about 15 minutes into him shifting his food around his plate, he heard his aunt say, "They back, y'all." Everyone rushed to the front porch. Eddie, his grandma, they immediately grabbed his mama, bracing her for whatever news they were in for. "Whatever come next, now, niece, you remember our God is an all-knowing and all-powerful God. His ways is not our ways, child." Denise shook her head. No, she did not want to accept a fate or a destiny where she lost her baby, no matter whose will it was to happen. "Y'all found my baby?" she asked the men, who all wore defeated looks on their faces. None of them wanted to speak. "Y'all ain't gonna tell me nothing?" Her father shook his head no and said, "No, baby, not yet." Eddie saw his dad shuffle towards his mama with his head down like a pouting little boy. He got within a foot of his wife before burying his entire face in her chest. His body convulsed as he heaved uncontrollably, letting go of the tears he had been holding back all night during the search. She let out a screech that sounded less like his mama and more like the pterodactyls in Eric's dinosaur books he obsessed over. Muddy began to sing. "We down here praying." The rest of the family's voices rose up like an ocean of sound surrounding the old woman's soft voice tone. They threw in ad-lib of please. Eddie's parents held each other, rocking back and forth before his mama turned to him and extended her arm. They held him tight as they surrendered themselves to the bitter comfort provided them by those dark and buttery voices enriched by centuries of pain. It wasn't long before they heard a car in the distance, honking its horn like madness. It was Deacon Caldwell's old Bonneville speeding down the dirt road leading to the house. He pulled in and his wife jumped out of the passenger seat with Eric in her arms like a limp noodle. Eddie's parents sped to her, grabbing Eric. The Caldwells lived in the next county over and usually just came to Worth County for services on Sunday, Bible study on Wednesday, and choir practice for Sister Caldwell on Thursdays. They just happened to be stopping through today to drop off a cake to another church member on their way to eat breakfast and do some shopping in Albany. As they were riding, Sister Caldwell saw Eric's foot sticking up from a ravine on the side of the road. She jumped and blurted out, "Honey, stop!" "Hey, now, woman, what done got into you?" "Stop what?" "I saw something back there in the ditch," she said. "Hell, I bet you did see something. Possum, snake, or anything be in them damn ditches." He was almost laughing, but she wasn't. "Benny Lee Caldwell, I ain't crazy, and don't you be cussing at me either." "All right, Jackie. What you seen and what you want me to do about it?" "It looked like a foot, like a child foot." "Oh, ain't no child in that ditch," he scoffed. "Honey, how you gonna be able to sleep good tonight knowing somebody's child was laying out there and we just went on about our business instead of doing God's work?" He reluctantly turned around, and there Eric was, rescued. As his parents ushered him inside through the hordes of relatives like bodyguards escorting a celebrity through members of the press, Eddie caught eye contact with his little brother and saw his glazed-over expression briefly turn into a smile as if he was the only person he recognized. He was hugged and then immediately inspected for serious injuries. Nothing but minor scratches and scrapes. In the bathtub, while bathing him, is where Denise and Madeir did a thorough examination to make sure Eddie was 100% unharmed. He was, however. He was just simply not there. They came from the back with Eric wrapped in a 100-year-old quilt. Denise took Eric over to Eddie and their dad, while Madeir went to the boy's grandparents. "Everything all right, Mama?" their grandma asked. "Yeah, but not all the way. I don't want to say what I thinks it looked like." Medea was 78 years old and had known about the orb. They just never gave it a name. They never talked about it, and it hardly ever came, but she knew Donnie Ray. She even watched him and his siblings for their mother a time or two. She knew the parents of the little girls. She played hopscotch with their mother as they were girls. She also knew that Donnie Ray's mother was a third cousin to the young girl's father. They were all related to little Samuel Jones, too. A lot of people thought the orb targeted certain bloodlines. Eric would not speak, and he barely acknowledged anyone's presence besides Eddie. The next morning, as the family packed their things to go back to Maryland, ending their trip early, of course, Denise brought a sheet of notebook paper and a pack of Eric's crayons over to him. "Baby, can you be a big boy and draw Mama a picture?" she asked. Eric barely reacted. She slid the paper to him and said, "Draw Mama a picture of the person that you were with yesterday." Eric took the orange crayon and began drawing a small orange ball. He then dropped the orange crayon for a yellow one. With the yellow crayon, he made a golden outline around the orb. Silent tears fell from his mother's eyes as he confirmed her worst nightmare.